So what does Congress want to hear from the president?
Joining us now, Republican Congressman Scott Garrett of New Jersey. Welcome, sir. We appreciate you coming back on the program.
Sure.
Okay, so you have been virulently opposed to the spending that's gone on regarding the stimulus plan. Let's talk about what you would like to hear from him now that that is apparently a done deal.
Yeah, and you say it's a done deal. Obviously, it went through the process now. The big part of it, of course, is spending all that money and see actually where it goes out the door and how it's spent and the like.
Correct.
But what I'd like to see is, his usual optimism that we all saw during the campaign, that we can work in a bipartisan manner. And I'd like to see that because we have not seen a bipartisan manner from this administration from day one. A lot of meetings and that sort of thing, or extending of hands, but when we try to work with them, we're rejected. So that's one. And two, I'd like to see some consistency as far as whatever their plans are going to be in the housing market and the banking situation and the stock market and what have you. Consistency is what the market's looking for, and they're just not getting it from the administration.
By the way, I want our viewers to know that Congressman Garrett ran to this from a vote that he had to take, so that's why he's a little out of breath. I'm just going to give you a second to catch your breath. No, that's quite all right.
Sorry about that.
Elizabeth Warren, the woman whose job it is to monitor TARP spending, who found that horrendous $78 billion of overpayment on the first TARP package. I'm just wondering if there's somebody like her that will be monitoring all of the spending that's going to go on in the much bigger $800 billion stimulus plan.
Well, we certainly hope so, and actually I would like to throw this out to the American public, and that's something that we're talking about doing, to have the American public become involved in this. Remember, again, what President Obama said during the campaign, that he was going to be the most transparent administration ever, that this bill should have been up on the website 5 days before he signed it. Well, he didn't do that. Well, that's not good, but let's go forward. Now we should be transparent going forward, setting up websites and what have you so the American public can talk about their individual projects that they're seeing in their backyard, if you will, and saying, well, this is being waste. This is really not creating jobs. This is just politics as usual, that it goes to one district or the other. That's probably where we're going to see the best information come from, the American public.
Representative Garrett, some in Congress are now calling for a government spending freeze. Okay. Obviously, when you're talking about stimulus, that's not going to happen, but an overall freeze from now on. And, of course, this superimposed over President Obama saying yesterday he wants to cut the deficit in half in the next 4 years. Are you for that type of fiscal responsibility that he is at least calling for?
Well, yeah, we're not really sure what he's calling for. He's calling for fiscal responsibility on one hand, but as you said, $350 billion out the door at the beginning of January, $800 billion out the door a week or so ago, $410 billion out the door sometime this week. Geithner talking about $2 trillion out the door in the weeks ahead. So I'm not exactly sure what he means by fiscal responsibility when he talks about that. But yes, I'm all for putting at the minimum a spending freeze. I'd like to see us even go further than that because we all know there's just so much waste, fraud, and abuse in Washington that we should be actually cutting in areas.
Congressman, what are you hearing about taxes? Are the Bush tax cuts going to be allowed to sunset, or are we going to see tax hikes all over the place?
More the latter than the former. I don't know when, the idea of allowing American public, hardworking American families and small businesses, the idea of allowing them to keep more of that money rather than sending it here to Washington became some sort of a bad idea. But it must be here in Washington because any time the Republican Party, myself and others included, throw up the idea that the way to get the economy going is to allow you all to keep as much money as you can of your own paycheck, we're being knocked down by the administration, knocked down by Barney and Nancy and Harry Reid, saying, no, that's not the way to go. Spending is the way to go. I predict that you will see a push for even more taxes. You'll see a push for the ending, we've already seen it, of the Bush tax cuts. All things that will put the economy in the worst direction that it possibly could be and extend the recession even far longer than it ever should be.
Gee, I wish you could wish we could end on a happy note. Is there anything positive that you see?
Let's see. Well, as I say, I'll end where I began. I am optimistic when I hear the speech by the President tonight that he will give a resounding, great, eloquent speech, and he will be optimistic. And now, if he just follows through on that, being bipartisan and actually using some of his authority as a president to start cutting taxes and cutting spending, then we all have something to be optimistic about.
Representative Scott Garrett of New Jersey, we thank you very much. And there seems to be optimism already in advance of it, with the markets up about 187 points. Don't forget to watch our live coverage of the president's speech.